important. John Bercow.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is a pleasure to follow the Honourable Lady, the member for Morecambe and Lunesdale, to whose principled speech I listened with respect, but sadly, from my point of view, without agreement. It is vital, Madam Deputy Speaker, that all of us, from whatever part of the House we come, take a responsibility to seek to address a wide range of issues relevant to this bill, addressing the issue of infertility, addressing the issue of congenital diseases, addressing the issue of miscarriages, addressing the issue of the development of human embryos, addressing the issue of how to apply fruitful research to the development of effective treatments, addressing the issue of what itself constitutes, causes, and can potentially cure or alleviate a serious disease, addressing the issue of how we can improve contraception in this country, and addressing the issue of genes and chromosomal abnormalities that give rise to the array of distressing phenomena with which all members of the House are familiar. My starting point, Madam Deputy Speaker, is to say that I have always felt that where the science is essentially persuasive, as I believe it to be, we should have a model of facilitation. We should go with embryo research because of the tremendous human opportunities that it offers to this country. That is to say, I take an empiricist view, a pragmatic view, an instrumental view, rather than a view that on some sort of abstract principle inveighs against the very possibility that such research should be allowed or even extended. It seems to me to be a good thing. In a moment, I'll give way to my honourable friend, and I say, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I believe that some of the media treatment of the scientists who are working day in, day out, week in, week out, month in and month out, is a travesty. Yes. It does no credit to them, and it does a gross disservice to the people who are outstanding public servants, doing their best for infertile women, doing their best for people suffering terrible diseases, doing their best for children in some of the most appalling situations, doing their best for this country and doing this country proud. Of course, I give way to my honourable friend.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend. I mean, he gives us his central motivation, the sense that where he can see science leading somewhere, then that should be facilitated. But where does he put the sticking grounds? And how does he form his view that even if there is an argument that science can take us in a particular direction that may be beneficial, where would he feel uncomfortable? How does he make that judgment? And how does he expect other people to make such a judgment?
I'll offer two answers to my honourable friend, neither of which will satisfy him, but both of which seem to me to be sound, Madam Deputy Speaker. The first is to say that I'm wholly opposed to straightforward human cloning, and I suspect that would be a majority view across the House. That is not what is planned or portended by this bill. Secondly, I say to my honourable friend, let politicians for a moment assume the mantle, rather uncharacteristic, of humility. None of us in this House is as great an expert, I suspect, as Sir Martin Evans or some of the other individuals to whom reference has been made. I know there is expertise in the House which is respected, but we cannot compete with it. I don't believe that we should close off the possibilities of research simply because a member, possibly already geared to vote in a particular direction or possibly not, chooses to seize on a given research project or particular academic to advance a view that says, with that method we should not proceed. I believe, I have to say to my honourable friend, in a degree of competition. I don't believe the mere existence of alternatives is sufficient to allow us credibly or responsibly to say, we won't use that mechanism, we'll stick to another. We'll satisfy ourselves with something that already applies. I believe that there should be plenty of opportunities for different methods to be used in the hope that eventually one or more will yield positive results. I will give way to the honourable gentleman, the member for Southport, and then I would like to make some progress.
Separate. Adult stem cell research is morally unproblematic, and there is a distinction here. Embryonic stem cell research is clearly morally problematic, otherwise we wouldn't be here debating it.
The sort of stem cell research that the honourable gentleman supports might not attract the level of criticism. I am sceptical myself on the strength of the information thus far I have garnered as to whether it is likely to deliver the scale and quality of outcomes which might be achieved by the sort of embryo research planned for by this bill. So I respect the honourable gentleman's position, but I stand by the view that we need all sorts of different sources of potential improvement, and we shouldn't act as the exclusive arbiters in favour of one rather than of either of the other two main sources that seem to be on the table at the moment. Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me confront, as other members honourably and powerfully have done, some of the key issues. First, the whole question of admixed embryos. I respect the fact that for some members there is a feeling of almost overwhelming revulsion at the idea. It is not a feeling that I, for my part, share. I said I'm motivated by the pursuit of results. I think that the pragmatic arguments are strong. There is a shortage of human eggs. Reference was made by the honourable gentleman member for North Norfolk and by others to another relevant factor in this context, and that is that the whole process of egg harvesting is a difficult, burdensome and hazardous process. Moreover, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for a proportion, admittedly only a very small proportion of women, it is potentially fatal. My view is that if you can efficiently deploy an alternative and say, let's take those animal eggs as part of the mix instead, there is much to commend that. And I look forward to the possibility, I put it no more strongly, that that process might yield beneficial results. And I simply say to my honourable friend, for whom, as he knows, I have the highest regard and personal affection, I hope he would accept that all the morality isn't on one side. Of course he's motivated by moral considerations. I have to say so too am I. I can't stand idly by. Look at the situation of somebody withered and debilitated by the most appalling disease, be it Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or motor neurone disease. Think that there might be a possibility either of cure or of alleviation for that individual by one or more of the methods provided for in this bill, and simply turn away and say some abstract theory, some dogmatic reasoning, some religious insistence prevents me giving the go-ahead to that work. So that's where I'm coming from on this subject. And as far as saver siblings are concerned, again, of course, there are similar moral considerations, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Specifically, let me confront the one point that is most regularly and passionately made against the concept of the saviour sibling. The notion that what is entailed is the bringing into being, for a purely utilitarian purpose, of an additional human being. In some sense, this, it is said, devalues the individual. That person might suffer subsequently. It is intrinsically wrong. My judgment, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is that that in the first instance should be a judgment for the prospective parent or parents to make.
Absolutely.
And if the prospective parent says to him or herself, or the partnership decides, that yes, this is something that we do want to do. A sibling can be helped. A disease can be cured. A life can be saved. A prospect can, as a consequence, be extended. I have respect for that. And it seems to me that the pursuit of tissue typing in that sense is the best and obvious example of the deployment of the potential of scientific research for the ultimate purpose, namely the saving or improvement of human life. It exists not in isolation, but for a particular benefit. I give way to my honourable friend.
I'm very grateful. Would my honourable friend extend his argument to make these therapeutic opportunities universal? Or does he accept that only some people are likely to benefit from it and not all those who would want it?
I can certainly conceive that not everybody who wishes to benefit will do so. If my honourable friend is encouraging me, and I'm not quite sure if this is the gravamen of his intervention, in the direction of saying more and more and more and more people should so benefit, the answer to that is in the affirmative. I thought I had made it clear that it seems to me to be essentially a good thing, something that we should welcome, and something that the bill should allow both to be introduced and indeed to be extended. Of course, the whole question of the so-called need for a father is writ large in our considerations. My view, for what it's worth, is that what the government proposes is perfectly reasonable. I'm not sure, actually, the insertion of the phrase supportive parenting was necessary. It was a compromise in the other place. The earlier formulation seemed to me to be perfectly satisfactory, but I'm not going to coruscate the government from making an attempt to meet what was reasoned, if in my view incorrect, criticism. They've come up with a form of words which seems to me to be unobjectionable. My concern is that we shouldn't discriminate. We shouldn't have class actions. We shouldn't have some dogmatic exclusion of whole categories of people. We have equality legislation with which we should be compatible. And my anxiety is that the call to reinsert the need for a father is not grounded in evidence, but driven by preconceptions, and in some, though not in all cases I accept, driven by rank prejudice. That is wrong, and judgment should be made on the basis of the individual case, not on the strength of a theory. I've given away generously, as my honourable friend will testify, and I hope that he will have the opportunity to catch your eye, Mr Deputy Speaker, and to favour the House with his own views. My concern is very simply this. Let's have a fusion, as in the best traditions of this country, acting pragmatically, and this Parliament thinking sensibly we have had, between science, appropriate and in some cases quite robust regulation, and the social mores of our society today. I applaud, on this matter, as on almost every other, the political record and the legislative achievement of my right honourable and learned friend, the member for Rushcliffe. He, I think, will confirm, as what he called himself a social liberal, that attitudes today are different from those which applied 20 years ago. The idea we haven't had time to consider the issues is preposterous. Frankly, those who are opposed in principle always level that objection. No time would be sufficient for them fully to exhaust their list of objections and prejudices and disagreements. We have had a good chance. The government, frankly, has handled it very fairly indeed. This is a decent bill. It's a progressive piece of social reform, and it offers the chance of the significant improvement in the quality of life for thousands and thousands and thousands of people in this country. I welcome the bill. I hope it enjoys safe passage.
Dr. Brian Italy.